it's something beyond. Okay, that's I think all of us could understand.
Yes.
But beyond, that means it's, or can we say, is it sensible? Is it perceivable?
No.
No. So one and two could be, and we can feel, we can, or let's say we can see.
Maybe I misunderstood you. So we can see food,
Mm-hmm.
and we can see family,
Yeah.
but we can't see the real good. And so the object of 3 cannot be seen, whereas the objects of 1 and 2 can be seen. But it sounds, I think now, that you're talking about feeling from within. We can feel from within the drive for these things. We can feel from within the drive for these things. And we can feel from within the drive for this. So in that sense, it's perceivable. The object is not perceivable, but the drive is perceivable.
Drive is perceivable.
And I think we're feeling it right now. Why are we in this room? Are we here to make money? Are we here to get respect?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we here to get knowledge?
Yeah. Okay. That, then about the, how to say, object of reality. Is that, how to say, could we have a common sense of that knowledge? It means from her, for her, for me, is that the same object?
Yes.
Platon must be said so, yes. Yeah, it is real good.
Yes.
But is that so? Okay, then how did Platon realize that is the real? Does it make sense?
Well, I could hear it meaning two things. What you're asking: how did he believe that there was such a thing? That would be one question, and the second question would be: how did he know what it was?
Oh yes.
Which one?
Okay. In this part, second one.
The second one.
Yeah.
I don't think he knew what it was.
Oh.
I think this is a philosophy of describing this longing we have without telling us what the goal is.
Oh, that is just longing.
There's longing for a thing. There has to be a thing, otherwise the longing would be in vain. But we don't know what it will be. It'd be as if you've never been to Pittsburgh,
Mm-hmm.
and you have this longing to go to Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Let's imagine.
Yeah.
But you've never been there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't make sense to have that longing and also admit there's no such thing. You could say, well, then you could say, well, I have this longing to go to this place that doesn't exist. Poor me. What a terrible longing to have, a longing to go to a place that doesn't exist. But then the next step would be, I have a longing to go to this place. I'm confident that it exists, but I don't know what it's like. I've never been there. That's why I want to go. That's the position Plato's in. People often think he's in some third position where he knows exactly what Pittsburgh is like, and he's saying you should go there, but then he's strangely not telling you what it's like.
What? Then Plato Plato did not write about the wisdom, but it, the content of
Yeah. Well, because I think it's mushin. I don't think that there is content to it.
but
I thought I was using your term for no
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
It's not that the real good is the following 10 sentences, and if you understand those, then you'll know the real good. That's not what it's like.
Oh,
It's not something that can be conceptualized. It's of a different order.
Different order.
Did I mispronounce that word, mushin? Okay. Yes. As I was reading your book,
ちょっと今までの議論ちょっと
まとめる。じゃあ僕が理解した範囲で。だからウィズドムの内容についてはプラトンは語らないと言った。それ大丈夫かな、もう一回確認して。だからなんだ、リアリティをロンギングする、なんていう望んでくる、これはある。でも最終的なここについては語っていない。
Well, he wants to confirm that the longing for that is there. We have it,
yes.
But he doesn't. He says that it's there,
yes.
But he doesn't really explain what that is.
That's correct.
Talk anything.
Well,
Nothing about it.
In book 6, he talks a bit about it. So I'll say a few things, just for a minute or two, about what happens in book 6, so that because I think it will help our conversation here. So, a desire. Oh, that's even worse than others. Okay, that's also.
No. The black one or. これ新しいからなんか入れなきゃいけないですよね。押せたらいいの。
So I'm just using object for the goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I desire money. Money's the object. I desire the money. And then knowing is a certain kind of desire, and its object is truth. Especially truth about the real good. That makes it sound like this is a thing like money, or, a bouncing ball, or a marker. So here's an object. I have sight. I see the object. It's a very distinct thing. I have a faculty I exercise. We've set up this dichotomy where knowing has an object, and that makes it sound like knowing and the real good are in a relationship just like seeing and a marker. But here's the new part. In book 6, he says the good, which is the real good, capital G, is beyond being.
Oi.
In rank and power.
Oh, very good.
Beyond being, another way of saying that in English is it transcends.
Yeah.
Here's a quick way to think about this. Imagine you're a fish swimming in the ocean. You've got other fish, those are objects. You've got seaweed, those are objects. You've got coral, those are objects, and you see those. You don't see the ocean. The ocean is just the environment in which it's possible to see anything. That's what the real good is. That's what the good is. If the other fish are beings, the seaweed, they're beings, the coral are beings, the ocean is beyond being. The ocean makes it possible for there to be swimming and seeing in the first place. The real good is like that. You don't see it the way you see anything else. You don't even think about it. It would be if you're swimming deep in the ocean, you don't see the ocean. You just become aware of, all this time I've been swimming in an ocean. That's what epiphany for Plato is becoming aware of the conditions of just being alive at all.
Is the capital good?
The capital good. And that's why I called it mushin, in the sense of ushin, having a mind, is focusing on the fish or the seaweed or the coral. Mushin allows you overcome the concentration on the particulars and you are aware of the ocean.
Oh, amazing. Thank you very much.
Okay, sure.
今のところ無心についての本を彼に渡したので、無心ってだから心があるはものをフォーカスしてみる、無心はいわばなんて広く見る。で彼の今の理解はプラトンがその本当のリアルグッド、大文字のグッドを見るときは無心の心と重なると同じという、そういうふうに理解してくれた。
Like the sun in the allegory of the cave,
Yeah.
which in book 6 he devotes just an allegory to the sun. The sun is responsible for any seeing at all. You know, you can look at the sun, but you can look at this, you can look at this, only because there's light from the sun in the first place. Moreover, these things only exist because there's a sun in the first place. And so seeing the sun is not like seeing anything else. You're seeing the source of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, like a metaphor of light.
Yes.
We do not see the light.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And so coming out of the cave,
Yeah.
you're not doing the same thing you were doing at the bottom of the cave, but just doing it towards better things. You're doing a completely different thing.
Okay, but in this metaphor, cave,
Yes.
People could go out of the cave,
Yes.
and could they see reality?
In the Mushin sense that we've been discussing,
Yeah, but how do you say? Okay, one more. Could they recognize reality outside of the cave? Did Plato said so?
let me try an answer from the left field. Do you know this expression?
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned Suzuki, D.T. Suzuki.
Yeah.
I have not read him, but I've read Alan Watts, who refers to Suzuki a lot.
Yeah.
And Alan Watts reports that he asks Suzuki, what is enlightenment like?
Enlightenment.
And he said, Suzuki said, it's like everyday life, but you're just gliding 2 inches above the surface of the earth.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very similar to everyday life. It's just got a different character.
Oh, yeah.
That's what leaving the cave is like. It's not like you go from this place to some completely different place. It's just an allegory.
Yeah.
What he's saying is, you're in the same place, but you see it now in a different light.
今の分かった？なんていう大説鈴木という禅の人が語ったって言うんだけど、なんていうの、普通の現実を見るんだけど、2インチ少し上、
ちょっと上から見
ちょっと
てる感じ、浮いて見てる、
浮いて見てる感じって。だからそれはエンライトメントをもし覚醒悟りと理解すれば、悟りって何かと言ったらば普通の日常をこうちょっと浮いてみることだと答えだ。はい。
Thank you.
So, I think you, what shall I say? I feel very close what you are thinking. It means I could make questions. For me, I thought the Platon system, what shall I say? The Christianity, Platon, I thought the wisdom love could be close to faith, belief, or the reality is a divine, is a theology, realm of theology, I thought. How do you think that?
Well, in this course and in
Yeah.
others, I usually simplify by saying just take out one of the O's
Oh, interesting.
and talk about God.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think anything really has changed.
Yeah.
But it's a different understanding of God from the Christian God, or at least the typical, where the Christian God is a person, a particular being. And then you have a relationship with that particular being.
Yeah.
In this understanding, that's you. And it's not a being.
Yeah.
Just like you're swimming in the ocean. This is taking it too far. It's as if you are the ocean.
Oh, that's very familiar for me or for us.
Yes. Just as when I was reading your book, it's very familiar to me.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say very. It's familiar.
But it's not a Christian Orthodox or orthodoxical
Yeah. Yeah.
doctrine.
Yeah. So, in the history of thought, one thing I think happened is that Aristotle and then Christianity have given us a false understanding of Plato.
Wow. Aye.
In what way?
Oh, well, starting with Aristotle. So Aristotle was Plato's student for 17 years. Can you imagine having a student for 17 years? He knew him very well. And yet, there are times when Aristotle criticizes Plato. And you just think, how in the world could you have studied with someone for 17 years and not understood that? You've had students, presumably, who are very smart and you like each other and you work for a long time, but you realize like there are certain things that they will never understand, and it can go the other way as well. And so I think there are just certain things about Aristotle he just can't understand about Plato. Now you've asked for examples and I haven't given them. I'll try and give you some. But I think this is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Aristotle needs everything to be a being. And if the most important thing in Plato's philosophy is the good, which is beyond being, Aristotle could never understand Plato.
Wow.
And then Christianity, especially Roman Catholicism, uses Aristotle.
Yeah.
But that's Roman Catholicism. The big schism in the Christian church happens in roughly 1000 AD between the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, and so on. They're more Platonic, and the Roman Catholic Church is more Aristotelian.
Okay, then the term idea.
Yes.
Idea.
Yes.
Is that beyond being?
No. So
Oh.
being, So einai is the Greek from which we get idea, which is what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
So in English, idea or form, the forms, the beings, the ideas, the realities. Oh, this is a nice one. That's your personal one, is it? No, where did it come from? Oh, okay. Yes. Whereas the good is beyond all these things.
What? Then the capital good
Yes.
is beyond idea.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I thought good is an idea.
He calls it the form of the good.
What?
He calls it the form of the good in English. So the idea of the good. Okay?
Idea.
So that makes it seem like it's an idea, like the idea of the water bottle, the idea of the watch, etc. But it can't be, because then he says it's beyond being. And he's quite clear that the beings are the ideas, the reality. So to say the idea of the good is beyond the ideas, that makes no sense. It has to be
Oh,
just
amazing.
just this notion of beyond being. Let me just say something about this. For 10 years, just as a student and then as a young professor, I had no idea what that meant in the sense he's saying something exists and then he's saying it's beyond existence. That makes no sense. And it doesn't make any sense. Being has two meanings in English. This is that it is, what it is. So, you might ask me, do you have a pet? That's asking me, is there a thing that is my pet? And I could say yes. But then there's another question. What kind of pet do you have? Cat, dog, so on. That's the essence of it. What is it? Those are two different questions to ask. Does something exist? Versus what kind of thing is it? And Plato distinguishes these. He's not a scholastic philosopher. He's not even Aristotle, who really starts the distinguishing of the fancy terms. Plato has these notions, though. And when he says the good is beyond being, he's not saying it's beyond existence. That doesn't make any sense. If you say it exists, then you can't say it's beyond existence. He's saying it's beyond essence, which is to say it has no character. And when we think, and this again is getting into books 5 and 6, when we think according to Plato, what our mind does is find the essence of something. So if you want to think about courage, well, there are the instances of courage. Like, what did this guy do on the battlefield? What did this person do in the hospital? And so on. And then you find the essence. What is it that all of those things have in common that makes them instances of courage? And then if your mind can fix on that essence, then you understand. Understanding is taking the essence into your mind. When Plato says the good is beyond essence, he's saying you can't understand it because there's no thing, there's no essence for your mind to assimilate. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a relationship with it. Because it still exists. You have to have a relationship with it that's not what we understand of as knowledge, namely assimilating essences. And that's what I was trying to get at with the fish in the ocean. The fish has a way of relating to things in the ocean. It's sight. It sees other fish, it sees seaweed, it sees coral. That's like the mind sees the essence of the water bottle, courage, and so on. But that doesn't mean it has no relationship with the ocean. It obviously has a relationship with the ocean. That's its whole life is just swimming in the ocean. And when it lets go of looking at particular things, then it can become, for the first time, aware of the fact that it's in an ocean. And what Plato is saying, I think, at the summit of philosophy, after having thought about essences, what is justice, what is courage, what is, etc., etc., then going beyond that to a communion with the possibility of there being any things at all. And that's the sun or the real good or whatever it is that makes it possible for there to be beings. I forget what I went into lecture mode, I'm sorry. But
今のところ厄介だけども、なんていうの、大体だから善だよね。最高の善はなんだ、これでいくとなんだ、あるを超えちゃってるってわけだろ。そうすると善はあるのかないのかっていうふうな言い方したときに、なんていうの、なんていうの、あるとも言えないな、超えてる。でも普通って少なくとも僕がプラトン習った時には善はあるものだ。だからこれはイデアだ。
Oh, idea, yes, that's right.
イデアと言ってた。
Yeah, idea. Essence, idea, form.
いや
These are all the same.
いや
Yeah.
だからそれがビーイングでしょ。
Yes, yes.
だけどビヨンドビーイングだからイデアですらない。ビヨンドイデア。
Yes.
そうなんていうの、no words,
No words, no concepts, no definitions.
いや
なんか本にも実在と書いてるよね。その禅のイデアとかは。
実在、
実在じゃないってことやね。
そうだね、それで言えばね。
なるほど。
それで言えばね。
なるほど。
So I wanted to say something I've said to Yoko earlier, or whoever was with us at the time, that I'm not a great Plato scholar, but I have studied with the best Plato scholars in the West. And they know so many things about Plato and Aristotle and so on that I don't know. But just take the best one, in my opinion. Gerson is his name. But Reeve is another. So he was my supervisor, my dissertation, and I've worked with him. It doesn't matter. The point is, they've written books and books. You will never find any reference to this phrase in their books. They never mention it. Because they can't make any sense of that. And, they're aware that he says it, but they laugh. Like, I've been drinking wine with them, and I'd bring it up, and they laugh, and they're just like, well, Plato got out of control sometimes. Plato was a mystic sometimes. They see it as like Plato was being careless instead of the way I see it, which is that's what he was trying to say the whole time. Like that's the most important thing in his whole philosophy.
なんつったらいい？哲学界でこれは市民権を得てるかって聞いて。
So, I think he's kind of confirming that what you just said or what they are studying, does it have its own status in the world of philosophy in America?
Does what they're saying?
Yes. Do they
It's
have
not only
voice?
It's not only got its own status. That is the height of study of Plato in America.
So that is the highest. They
Yes.
have the high reputation.
Oh,
of
yeah.
the study of
Awards
Plato.
and prizes and prestigious positions and book awards and so on. And they're very valuable scholars and books and so on. I'm not criticizing them, except that the most important thing, they have nothing to say about it. They ignore it completely. And when I bring it up to them casually, they act like, oh, well, Plato made a mistake.
じゃあ、あなたが発言は市民権を得るかって聞いて。
And how about you?
Well, I'm not a great Plato scholar. I saw that and I realized, like, that's not, if you really want to understand Plato, you can't go that route.
You mean that what you're trying, what you just explained to us, what kind of thought you have about Plato? Is it listened to by the scholars, Plato scholars?
Not really,
in
no.
general?
I haven't really tried it. I'm not
You
going to
haven't
waste.
tried?
I'm not going to waste my time.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
It's not my goal. I don't want the status in the profession. Like that's what I'd have to go to the conferences and publish in the journals and so on. And I have other things I try to do in my life. In a perfect life, I'd do those things too, but I only have so much time.
But why aren't they pointing out the most important aspects?
Well, they don't think of it as the most important. They think, I mean, if what philosophy is finding the essences of things, then when he says the most important thing is to go beyond the essences, well, then that's just sort of like keep crashing the computer at the last second.
今のところいい？だから多分ね、かなりなんていうの、独特なプラトン理解をしてくださってる。で、それは中川先生に近い。で、中川先生っていうのはだからある種東洋的な理解に近い。で、僕の理解今から聞くけども、おそらくこの理解は神秘主義的だっていうふうに批判されるんだと思う。だからキリスト教の世界においては危険になる。なぜってグッドをガードにすれば God is beyond being でしょ。実在を超えちゃってるっていうか、だから神は実在するかに対してなんて神はない、あるとかないとかと言えないという言い方になっちゃう。そんなこと言ったら怒られる。神は実在する。Did you have experience to be criticized as a mysticism?
Yes. So I wrote my dissertation with this man who was a friend at the time, still is a friend. But I'm the only student he ever had. Again, I don't know if you want to film this. Can you turn this off? I don't want to embarrass him. And I got a year of time at Harvard to turn my dissertation into a book. And it started becoming something very different. So when I wrote it for him, it was all about, I'm going to simplify. It was all about the essences. And then in the year that I had to really explore, I really wanted to incorporate this philosopher, Heraclitus. And as I understood Heraclitus more and more, I realized Heraclitus, like Plato, thinks you need to get past this or else you'll forever be stuck. Are you following? No.
Maybe not
Okay.
clear.
Are you familiar with Heraclitus?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Let's see.
He's most famous for the saying...
Heraclitus,ね? Heraclitus.
Yeah. His most famous aphorism is, you can't step into the same river twice.
Yeah.
Problem is, he never said that. He said something similar to that, and that's the simple version. Trying to think of what would be the best. Oh, I know. Here's something he said.
Oh, Pantarei.
Yeah, Pantarei. That's from Plato. That's Pantarei is in Plato. It's not Heraclitus. Yeah. So, Heraclitus, about 100 sentences survive. His book is gone, but 100 aphorisms, as we call them, have survived, with other authors copying them, like quoting them. So, I just randomly tried to think of one that would be illustrative. The road up and the road down are the same. Exactly. So you get this appearance of contradiction. Like up and down, the road up and the road down are opposite roads, so how can they be the same road? And then there's a resolution, namely, well, it's from one perspective it's the road up, but from the other perspective it's the road down. Okay. Others of the aphorisms can't be resolved so easily. They seem to argue that the nature of the world is just contradictory. Anyway, that was all by way of saying that I took my dissertation, which was a history of Greek philosophy, about roughly about the kind of things we're talking about, but that was very Aristotelian. It was very Aristotle informed, because that's how I was trained. And then I started exploring Heraclitus and realizing he didn't fit into that. The contradictions didn't fit. He was trying to say the world is inherently contradictory. It's not that the world seems contradictory, but if you're smart, you can understand it. No, he's saying the world is full of actual contradictions. So anyway, I started developing basically a new book that involved that. And I sent it to my supervisor. Because, I should add one more thing, that it's not so that the idea isn't, well, then you'll see that the world is full of contradictions. But rather, you'll see that if you keep thinking like this, you'll be stuck up forever in contradictions. You need to go to a next layer beyond these things. Anyway, my supervisor read that, and then he called me, and he said, "Don't publish this." He said, "You will embarrass me." And I was a young man. I was 38. This was my first book. My career was going really well. And I had a choice. I could cooperate with my supervisor and friend and authority figure who was saying, "Don't do this, or you'll dishonor me." That's what he was saying. And he said, "You'll dishonor yourself. You'll never be respected in the field again." I could either try to keep respect, or I could publish what I thought to be true. And you won't be surprised. I published what I thought was true. And then I didn't get invited to the conferences anymore. So we're still friends. Nobody hates me or anything like that. It's just that was like, Miller kind of went off the rails. And I think any serious philosopher has to make that choice at some point in his life. Do you want status, or do you want to pursue the truth? You can't have them both. You can have enough status so that you get a check. I need to feed my family. I'm not Socrates. I'm not wandering around in sandals and begging and so on.
Interesting.
So if you could turn it on, it was just I don't want my supervisor to get it.
Thank you very much.
You see? Okay.
And we are so, how to say, familiar to that
Yes.
idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And why how could I have been trained in an environment like that and yet still find this familiar? It's got to be my father. I was raised by my father, who has this connection with Japan and Asia generally. I think I just sort of grew up with this I'm not saying that he read the Analects to me or something, but just growing up in that environment, this is natural to me.
Yeah, we can guess.
Yes.
Okay, back to Plato
Yes.
again. The deed about memory.
Yes.
Did he discuss something about memory concerning about this topic?
Yes. So this came up very early in the course. I don't know if you were there on the day when it came up. It was the first day, actually, so you weren't there. Shunya brought up the Meno paradox.
What?
The Meno paradox.
Meno.
Meno. Yeah.
What is it?
So I'm happy to do it again because it's so simple but so deep. Meno's the name of the dialogue by Plato, also the name of the main character. He's the one who brings up this paradox. Or Socrates brings it up in conjunction with him. And the paradox is this. Well, at least here's a version of it that can help you appreciate it quickly. If I say, I have to pick a different word. Well, I'll use the word I used last time, so you're familiar. If I say, can you help find my parapluie? My parapluie. Can you help me find it? No. Parapluie. It's a French word, don't worry, you don't know it. I tried to pick a word at the time that nobody in here would know. It means umbrella. But if I said, can you help me find my parapluie, you just look at me like, I don't know how to help you. There's nothing in my mind when you ask me to help you find your parapluie. But if I say, can you help me find my umbrella, well then you're able to help me because I say umbrella, you remember some images of what umbrellas look like, and then we look around the room, and if something on the floor looks like the images in your mind, then you can help me. So, if learning is searching for knowledge, well, you can't learn anything new. That would be like learning to find your parapluie when you don't know what that is. You already have to know what it is that you're looking for. And that's the paradox. And Socrates' solution to the paradox is, you're right. We never learn anything we don't know. We already know everything. We're merely remembering what we've forgotten.
Yeah.
And whatever plausibility that has about other things, I think it's a much better argument than it's given credit for. I believe it, actually. But whatever its value for all kinds of things, I think in the end, all that matters for Plato is that there's one thing that we remember. And that's this. In other words, when we're being summoned to go beyond being by Plato, we're not being asked to go out to something he's not saying go to the Andromeda galaxy where you've never been before. There are all kinds of problems with that, but one of them is that you don't know where that is, or you don't know what he's talking about. But this, if he's correct that learning is not finding something new, it's remembering what you already have. When he summons you to go beyond being, he's summoning you to remember something that you already knew. And so the fish, and I'm switching the analogy now, the fish is not being asked to notice the ocean for the first time, but to notice the ocean for the second time or the third time or whatever. It's always been there. It's not like the instructor to the fish is saying, I'm going to show you something totally crazy and foreign and out in the middle of the universe. And I'm going to show you something so close to you, so intimate to you, that the moment you notice it, you'll realize it was always there.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Suzuki is talking about with the 2 inches above the ground. It's not, you're not going to some strange planet. You're not going to become some kooky mystic and so on. You're going to be the same person. It's just that now you're going to see it was always there.
Yeah. このパラドックスは面白いって言って、人は全く新しいことを知るってことはできないんだってわけね。常に知ってる。So, in this meaning, learning is equal to notice, aware,
Yes.
being aware,
Yeah, remembering,
remembering.
but remembering is, it's fine as a first pass, but the problem is it makes it sound like, well, there was this sentence I used to know, and now I'm going to remember that sentence. Noticing is even better, I think. You don't remember the ocean when you're swimming. You notice the ocean. Take the experience of meditation, where the goal, as I understand it, I mean, there are different types, of course, but the goal, as I understand it, is to detach from attachments. So I think of this, that's fine, but I just let that thought drift away, and then this desire or this fantasy, things come up, and in each case I let it go. So that I train myself after a while to notice the life that's underneath all of the particular fantasies, desires, attachments, and so on. If that life is experienced as, well, if meditation is something good, in the sense of you do that often enough that you become more aware of that life, well, that could only be good if that life were good. Let me put it by contrast. What if the world is the trick of the devil? What if the more aware you become of reality, the more you realize this is just a big game that a demon is playing on us? Well, then meditation would be a terrible thing to do. You would just become more and more aware of how horrible things were. So I think the promise in meditation is that there's a goodness to life, so that if you can detach from the superficial attachments and then notice the deep pulse of life, you will have a joy because life is good. And I think that's what Plato's saying by calling this the good. This life beyond being will make you happy.
瞑想
瞑想のこと、瞑想、瞑想するっていうことをするっていうのはやっぱり何かどんどん自分の中の先入観のようなものとかどんどんレイヤーを取っていって、だんだんと何かこの世界っていうものが良いものだっていうことに気づいていくっていうことなので、どこかそこの背後には良いもので世界はできていると考えていいですかね。良いものがあるっていう考え方があるからメディテーションっていうものは機能するっていうのか、もし逆に悪しか世界にないとすれば、メディテーションするっていうことは世界がいかにひどいもので出来上がっているかとすることを目的にしていくことになってしまうっていうので、メディテーションっていうものがやっぱりそのグッド、その善なるものっていうものと結びついている。 っていうふうに言えるんじゃないだろうかっておっしゃってるかと思います。はい。You, Patrick,
Yes.
you talked about the Matrix the other day, right?
The Matrix, the film?
Matrix, the film.
Yes.
Does this really?
Well, it certainly relates to Plato's cave, that the people there are living in an illusion, and the goal is to escape, because the illusion is a prison, they're being tricked. But it has nothing to do with the spiritual dimension that we're discussing, because when they escape, they realize how horrible things are. There's no goodness in the world outside of the Matrix. Whereas Plato's saying you escape and you realize how good it is.
Just realize the reality.
In the Matrix. That's right. Yeah, the Matrix is like the cave where they escape and they see the puppeteers, and then they can go back down and rescue people and like shatter the puppet show. But they don't go out to a place of joy and contemplation. Same for the Truman Show.
Yeah. Truman Show.
Yeah.
Truman Show. I don't remember that well, but.
Yeah.
マトリックスって映画知ってますか？キアヌ・リーブスの。
ああ、聞いたことがある。
はい。キアヌ、これなんかこのプラトンの話が出た時に必ずマトリックス出てくる。だけども今言ってくれたのはマトリックスの世界が表しているのはそのケーブの外に行っているのではなくって、この操り人形のパペットショーを見てる段階、そことの行ったり来たりをしてるだけで、その外にあるものまではマトリックスの世界の中には入っていない。
Yeah, those are, adaptations of Plato for materialistic culture, where this third thing is not part of the map. It's just, how do you get through bad versions of these?
とても唯物論的に世界を見たときにのみ成り立つ。So it's more like, I don't know if it's right, but Marx.
Yeah.
This way of looking at how the reality, how they are being operated.
Yeah. No, I mean, Marx came up a lot earlier for some reason, and if we get to books 8 and 9, he'll come up again. I think of Marx as Aristotle without God. So, as I mentioned, he was a scholar of ancient Greek philosophy, but that would probably get too much into.
Sorry.
Well, no, very quickly, if it's interesting to you. Aristotle has this notion of an activity. Energia is the Greek. And then there's praxis, which you probably heard. And then there's poiesis. Production. Practice. So this is just Aristotle. I haven't done anything specific to Marx. And so just sticking with Aristotle for the moment, a production is where I have a goal and I do something and I accomplish the goal and then it's over. So my goal could be throw away this marker. I have a production, I throw it away, done. And if I want to do another production, I find another marker, I throw it away. An activity, by contrast, is something that you do where the goal is the doing itself. So like an example that will help you to think of this would be a walk after dinner. Here I walked to get rid of the marker, I threw it away, then I was done. Versus I eat a dinner and then I want to go for a walk. I walk. I'm not walking to do a particular thing. I'm walking for the sake of the walking.
Is that activity?
Yeah, so internal goal is what we'll say. External goal. A practice is something that has both. So, for example, fighting a battle. This is Aristotle's example. What is the goal of fighting the battle? Winning. So that's its external goal. But if you're a soldier, you don't want to win in any way. How do you want to win? If you're a samurai, think of someone with a real code. You want to win. I mean, since it's come up, there's winning a war by dropping thousands and thousands of tons of bombs on the people of the nation, and then you win. That's what my country did to yours. That's winning, but that's dishonorable.
Oh, yeah.
The soldier wants to win with honor.
Yeah.
That's the internal goal.
Yeah.
To show you the difference, the throwing the marker away is the goal of my production. But if it's my goal and I'm teaching and I'm busy, can you throw that away from me? And then I keep teaching and then you do it for me? I can alienate it to somebody else because it's an external goal. You then throw it away. But walking after dinner, I'm really busy. Can you do the walking after dinner for me? It doesn't make any sense. I'm doing it for its own sake. So similarly, I can get somebody else to win my battles, but I can't win them in an honorable way that gives me honor unless I fight them. Anyway, that's Aristotle. What Marx notices is that... Oh, I'll just say a bit more about Aristotle. Aristotle thought that the only activity that meets this criterion is contemplation of God. Now that's a whole other story about why he thinks that. We can talk about it if we have time. But he thinks that's the only thing that's a real activity. To give you a sense of why. I go for a walk after dinner. Well, I'm doing that to kind of enjoy the evening and so on. That's why I don't do it forever. Because, well, I get tired and it gets dark and I have to go to the bathroom and I run out of energy and so on. It's actually a kind of production hidden as if it were an activity. He thinks that the only activity that's completely self-sufficient in every moment is contemplation of God, because that's the only one that has no deficiency whatsoever. For what it's worth. He thinks that to do this, as a result, you need reason at its highest register. And so only free men, namely philosophers, are going to be able to do this. This can be done by anyone, because the slave, even if he can't decide what the point of the production is, the master can tell him, here's what I need you to do. In other words, the master sets the goal, and then the slave accomplishes the goal, because the goal can be separated. And so Aristotle's master-slave distinction and his politics is based on this difference. And Marx noticed that, and then he recognized our society under industrial capitalism is becoming production. Namely, everything is about making something so that you can make the next thing, so that you can make the next thing. And if the meaning of life is found in activity, then life under capitalism becomes meaningless. I've had to really simplify it, I've left this out and so on. Why did we get onto Marx?
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Why did we do that?
Because of the matrix.
The matrix. Yes. Yes. Oh, and then I said, you brought up Marx, and I said, yes, those films are kind of Marxist in the sense that these oppressed people in the Matrix or Truman in the Truman Show, they recognize at a certain point, I'm being oppressed, and I want to escape the oppression. That would be like being a slave to production in a capitalist society, realizing, well, I'm not going to be oppressed anymore. That's what Marx is recommending. But he's Aristotle without God, because Aristotle would think, yes, escape production so that you can contemplate God. But Marx is an atheist. There's no God to contemplate, so it's not clear what you do after you escape alienation and production. And that's when he says, well, you fish in the morning and you'll garden in the afternoon, and then you'll criticize literature in the evening. It's like, well, you do these things that are kind of pleasant for a while, forever. There isn't a goal.
Oh, sorry. Back to the key sentence.
Yes.
Where is
So
it?
it's book
Could you-
6.
yeah.
Let's see.
Book 6.
Book 6 or 7. Oh, here again, I wish I had my... I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
きっと訳が全然違うんじゃないかね。
そうでしょうね。わあ、すごいですね。
ナンバー509。
Yeah, 509B.
9の B の最後。ああ、その実在のさらに。
Yeah, there we go.
は
I'll give you the diagram.
これどこの役を今探してますローザローザン Where are we looking for?
The good is beyond
Wow.
being and rank and power.
509の最後。読んでも何も分からないこれ。
いやこれ実在じゃなくてなんかエッセンスに近い方の訳語じゃないとおかしいってことですか
でもまあ
ビーンと書いてはいるよね。
一応その実在のさらに彼方に書いてある。ほら。
これ自分で訳してるんやつね。こ
あ、この先生ね。
れ自分でこう訳してる。
So here's the picture.
Oh.
This is called, so at this stretch from the end of 6 through 7, there are 3 famous images. And they are the sun, the line, and the cave. We spent the first day on the cave. All the cave does is take these two and combine them. And so tomorrow or next Tuesday we'll do the line, but now we can do the sun since we're here. It's an analogy. So there's a visible realm, namely what we see here. There's a sun, which is shining light. And that shining of that light makes it possible for us to see objects of sight. In this case, the tree. So we have an eye, which, deprived of light, by the absence of the sun, couldn't see this. So this makes possible the vision of this. It also makes possible the existence of this. He's got a vision that's not far from the truth, which is that everything in our solar system comes from the sun. Every planet is some fragment of the sun. That's sort of the idea. And certainly, you don't even need a planetary physics, just things grow only because of the light of the sun. So the sun is responsible for their existence or their being. So that's the visible realm, and the whole point of the image is to help us understand the intelligible realm, the spiritual world, the world of understanding. There's something in us, if this is our body, there's a part of our body that allows us to see. So too, there's a part of our soul which allows us to understand. We've now done the psychology. There are other parts of the soul. But it's reason especially that he's concerned with, because reason has the true object, which is being or reality. Unlike this middle part of the soul called the spirited part, which is interested in status, or the appetitive part of the soul, which is interested in money. That's what we did before the break. Well, it's only because the good shines truth in the way that the sun shines the light that we are able to understand being or reality. Just as it's only because the sun shines light that we can see trees. But also, it's only because the sun shines light that there's a tree in the first place. The sun creates this and then makes it visible. The good creates this and then makes it understandable. But it is beyond being. In rank, it's of a higher nature, but in power, namely, it makes possible the existence and the intelligibility of this. That's why it's beyond it in power. And the whole point of philosophy, turns out, in books 6 and 7, is to understand this. But if understanding is this, then what does he mean? That's where I think Mushin comes in. This is all, well, it's not ordinary mind, but it's intellectual effort and categories, definitions, and so on. This has to be beyond ordinary mind. Because without that, the point of all this is lost.
Amazing.
I mean, put it in absolutely simple, practical terms, you could have somebody who has memorized all the encyclopedias, who has the definition of everything, can do every math equation, etc., etc., etc. But if they've never had an encounter with the foundation of everything, which Plato's presuming is good, they won't know what the value of any of that is. They won't know how to use it in the service of this.
In the service of... In the service of good.
Yes.
How did you say? In the service of good.
Yes.
Truth could be heaven. How? In the service of good.
Yes.
Reality or being can come into
That's right.
existence.
Well, reality and being are already coming into existence, and then when we get there, we can use them And we can use them randomly, because it would have to be random if we have no acquaintance with this. Or, by coming into acquaintance with this, we can use them, and I said, in the service of this.
Right. ところいや訳も間違いではないわけね。その通りに。でも意味が全然わからない。
I thought of one more thing to say. There's the production or the creation of the world from this good. And then there's reason, us, which can look up towards this. So there's a flowing out, and then there's a turning back. And this was called by later Platonists the road up and the road down. And when Heraclitus was seen as a prophet of Platonism, the road up and the road down are the same. I find that, to me, that's one of the most exciting thoughts in this whole system. Because I mentioned to you what the field of Plato's scholarship ignores, namely the beyond being. But I think the history of Platonism has ignored something. All the focus has been on contemplation of God. That's the road up. But there hasn't been a focus on producing in light of the good, which is to say the road down. There's been, I think, a false stereotype that the Platonist is like an ascetic who has given up on the world and only to focus on the good. And I think there's a place for that. That would be the sort of pure road up. But that's only one side of the story. The whole point of escaping the cave is to come back down into the cave. So that's why Yoko and Hiroka, I mentioned when you drove me back, I think that's when it was, that I'm not interested in Plato scholarship, first of all because people are doing it much better than I am, but also because there's this huge gap. Namely, what can we do with Plato for now? I see that as the road down. Namely, how by engaging with what's going on right now, using Plato, can we understand it? Which would mean in light of this. And I've given you an example. In politics, for example, it would be something has gone wrong in our politics, where whether it's Marx or capitalism, if I had a moment, I'd talk about our Fukuyama friend. Maybe I will, just to finish up. It's always missing this. It's trying to do justice without the whole point, which is the good. I'll tell you what our friend Fukuyama did wrong. He understood that Plato's soul had three parts. He understood that there's an appetitive part, the money-loving. He understood that there's a spirited part, the honor-loving. So far he was right. And before I say where he went wrong, I'll just say his contribution in that famous book called The End of History in 1992. And for those of you who are too young, right before Soviet communism fell, first of all, those of us who were alive at the time just sort of assumed this is going to go on forever. That was the world that we were raised in. And it was just these two big empires, the American Empire and the Soviet Empire, and that's just the way it was going to be. And Fukuyama wrote this article called The End of History, ? Where he argued that liberal capitalism, the American model, would be the end of history. because it solved all of the human problems. And so history was a working out of the problems of human life, and they would all eventually end up with liberal capitalism. And then the Soviet Union fell like 3 months later, and he was heralded as this huge prophet. Like, wow, we all thought the Soviet Union would last forever, and you predicted it would eventually fall on philosophical grounds. So then he wrote a book called The End of History, no question mark anymore. The End of History is the main part of the title, and The Last Man. By the way, the end of history is a reference to Hegel. Hegel's this German philosopher who thought that philosophy was working out contradictions through history, and that it would eventually resolve them all, and Hegel thought he'd resolve them all, and he was the end of history. Marx adopted Hegel's philosophy and thought, well, it's not about ideas, it's about modes of economics, and things are working themselves out through history until eventually the communist utopia, and then that's when we'll have the end of history. And Fukuyama was turning all that on its head, saying, no, the end of history is liberal, democratic capitalism. But, and this is the part people don't remember, and the last man, this is a reference to Nietzsche. Nietzsche in the 19th century saw that there were people in bourgeois, liberal, democratic nations who, the young men especially, who felt like the spirit of adventure is gone. It's all about making money, being comfortable. And the last man was the idea of mediocrity forever. But there would be a rebellion against that by adventurous young men. That's where he got this. He said there's a part of our soul that wants honor, and even if liberal democratic capitalism is the best for making everybody rich, it can't satisfy this, and so it's always going to have to struggle with Nietzschean rebellions. Okay, well that's a whole other subject. I'll end now because the reason I brought this up is, what about the most important part of the soul? Reason. He understood reason as finding the means to your ends. So if I have an end, namely lunch, reason is what I use to calculate how to get lunch. This is the understanding of reason you get in a British philosopher, David Hume, from the 18th century. Does that sound anything like what we've talked about, the wisdom-loving part of the soul in Plato? No. It's not that Plato doesn't think you don't use your reason to find out the best place to go to lunch. Sure. But that's not what reason's about. What's reason for in Plato? And if you don't know this, then I failed today. I didn't come and teach the one thing I really wanted to teach. What's reason for in Plato? Wisdom is its virtue, so...
Justice.
Justice is when all the parts are working in harmony. So there's something particularly that reason does. What's that?
Sound or good.
Yes, it focuses on what's really good.
Oh, yeah.
Or God. That's totally absent here. What Fukuyama's done is he's plugged in this modern notion as a substitute for Plato. He's taken God out. Just like Marx took God out of Aristotle. It's what the modern philosophers just keep doing over and over again. Is they want to take this ancient wisdom but then leave the God part out. And I think the problems that follow necessarily. Because it's not like the ancient philosophers inserted God as a random afterthought. It was always the point.
So in Plato's idea, God is good. I mean,
Yeah.
big good.
Yes.
Big character.
Yes. And to be clear, he doesn't say God, he says the good.
The good. So
Yes.
He never used the word God.
No, because, he's in a society that has its own theology. Lots of gods like Zeus and Hera and Aphrodite and so on. And look what happened to his teacher Socrates, who talked about having a daimonion. One of the two charges was you introduced gods that are different from the gods of the city. And I think Plato drew the lesson that you better be careful when you introduce a new god. People don't like that. And he wasn't just introducing any old new god. He was introducing the notion of monotheism.
So you're saying that people do not like the Plato saying God because they believe in Greek gods, or
That's right.
That
That's right.
gods?
Yeah, or he never even gave them the chance to get angry with him. He just never provoked them. He just said they're good. And it's so hard to appreciate what he's doing. He's inventing monotheism. One God. He's definitely inventing it for the Greeks, but I think he's inventing it, period. Nobody else in the West has this idea at that time. Maybe the Jews, maybe, but I'm not a scholar of the Hebrew literature, but I'm pretty much persuaded that even the Jews of this time had multiple gods. It wasn't until the Hellenistic period that they settled on one. And you felt it from the beginning. It was the day 1 or day 2 of the course, and we were walking to lunch, and you said the thing about the Greeks that upsets you is this focus on the one. You didn't say God, but I think that's what you were after. And I said, it's not the Greeks, it's just Plato.
ちょっと一つ最後質問でそのゴンと違うグッドねソクラテスの大モリオンとは関係ないのかそれがヒントになっているのか
Does that God or good in Plato, does that have something to do with the Socrates daemon?
He never makes the connection. No. I think Plato thought that's the one God, and then there are lots of minor gods. Yeah, it's not like Christianity where there's one God and no other gods. There's one big God, and then there are smaller gods. And so you can have little daimonia. Who knows, maybe even Greek mythology is kind of true. And the Roman Catholic Church is really funny about this, because officially there's just one God. But then there are all these saints, and they treat them like they're gods.
And spirits are says.
Yeah. They have views of ghosts and all kinds of stuff. Demons, yeah. Angels.
But why the Aristotle and the Roman Catholic doesn't understand the goodness beyond everything?
I missed the first part. Why something?
He doesn't understand. You mentioned that Aristotle.
Oh, Aristotle.
Aristotle, yeah.
Okay. What does he not understand about Plato? Yeah, please. You leave any time. You want to why do I think Aristotle doesn't understand Plato?
Yeah, talking about the goods. Yeah. And Roman Catholic as well. If you touched on that. You touched on that, right?
The Roman Catholic Church in the 13th century assimilated Aristotle. And Thomas Aquinas is the big philosopher of the Roman Catholic Church, and the underpinning of his philosophy is Aristotle. And it's funny because his teacher, Aquinas' teacher, introduced Aristotle into discussion. And at first it was heretical. It was banned. Because Aristotle taught that the world has no beginning, for example. Or Aristotle thought the soul is not immortal. At any rate, They overcame that, and then he becomes basically the unofficial philosopher of the Catholic Church. And what I said offhand at that point in the course was Aristotle's misunderstanding of Plato means that when Catholics approach Plato, they read him as, well, failing in some respect, in the ways that Aristotle thought he was failed. And then now you're asking me, how did Aristotle think Plato failed? There are a number of ways. He rejected, let me give you an example. So, are you familiar with this word, epistemology?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, I try not to introduce fancy words, but I think this will help. It's the study of knowledge. It's an understanding of what knowledge is. And so next Tuesday, we're going to do books 5, 6, and 7. And the two big topics of those books are epistemology and ontology, which is the study of being. And they go together because when you know something real, something that is. If it's not real, you can't know it. Okay. Well, there are all kinds of problems in epistemology. Like, how do we learn? And Aristotle knew what many of these problems were, and he tried to give his own solutions. So how do we learn? Well, Aristotle thought you collect data, and you can see this in his texts. He's much more empirically minded. Plato's more meditative, if you like, more mystical. And Aristotle's more empirical and logical. And again, I don't think Plato's illogical. It's just that at certain points he recognizes its limits. At any rate, Aristotle thinks the way you learn is you go into the world, you sense things, you collect generalizations about things, and then you form accurate generalizations, accurate laws, if you like. Maybe laws is not the right word. So there's sensation, and then there's generalization. And let's say I want to study swans. Well, I go out and I observe a bunch of swans. Those are my sensations. But there's a difference between a scientist of swans and somebody who just enjoys looking at swans. The scientist collects these and then goes to the next step, which is generalization. And then the question is, well, what's the difference? Aristotle, at this point, he switches to a metaphor. He says, it's like a battle where you have a bunch of straggling soldiers, and they're retreating, and they retreat into a narrow pass, and they form a battle line. And then once they form a battle line, then they can move forward and attack. Where the attacking would be applying the generalization. Like, let's say, for example, I observe a bunch of swans, then I form an understanding of swans. That would be forming the battle line. And then I make predictions about what swans will do. Or I have solutions to swan farmers' problems. Swan farmers are saying, my swans are not reproducing. Oh, well, I understand swans. You need to make sure that the male and female swans interact at night, because that's when they reproduce, or whatever. Anyway, this is just pure metaphor. It's Posterior Analytics, second book, 19. This is this famous passage, and people crack their heads over it. Like, he's supposed to be this rigorous empirically minded person. And when it comes time to explaining the most important question of epistemology, which is how do we learn? He says, it's like your observations are retreating soldiers and they're retreating chaotically, and then one of them makes a stand and then the others fall into line and then they can advance. Pure metaphor. Doesn't really explain anything. Unless you were to say, well, why do they fall into line? What happens when they fall into line? He says nothing. Now, what does Plato think? You observe a bunch of things about swans, and then there is a moment when they fall into line. And what is that? It's when you remember the nature of swan, because you've seen that before. You were once, I'll simplify, you were once in God's company, where God showed you the whole world, and you can remember that. You might not like that explanation, you might think there are problems with it, but it's an explanation. That the reason this happens is because it's memory. Aristotle will never allow himself that explanation.
Just nothing.
Just nothing. Just nothing. I don't think there is anything. That's why in the end I think the Socrates' response to the Meno paradox is a good response. Because I've never heard another one that says anything. What is it that happens when people learn?
But in Aristotle's sense, if that's the case, it could be sophists. You know what I mean? Just
I may keep going.
yeah, just like generalization,
Yes.
like from the empirical studies of observations. According to Aristotle,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything. It just not. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Like, but in that sense, it could be anything. You know what I mean?
I think I do. Is this what you mean? That the sophists thought there is no answer to that question. There's just like what people accept as knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if Aristotle wants to be a sophist, he should take off the Plato jersey and put on the sophist jersey. Those are two different teams.
Yeah. So Aristotle could be a sophist. I don't know.
He doesn't want to be.
Mm.
He wants to be a Platonic philosopher without the mystical stuff. And what I find is, without the mystical stuff, you slide back into sophistry. Yeah. This problem comes up again in 20th century philosophy with Wittgenstein. I don't know if Ludwig Wittgenstein is studied in Japan, but Wittgenstein had this problem about what is it to understand a rule. So I'll give you a series of numbers. 2, 4, 6, 8. Do you see the rule? If you see the rule, then you should be able to tell me what the next number is. What's the next number, Yoko? She's right. What's the next number?
12.
No, it's 11. Because the rule I had in mind was add 2 until you get to 10, then add 1. Now, your rule was what most people would expect. But I had a different rule in mind. There is no sequence of numbers I could possibly give you that would show you what rule I have in mind. Because for any sequence of number, there are infinitely many possible number of rules. And so what is it to follow a rule? Wittgenstein's answer was the sophistic answer. It's you just do what people do. And that means that learning is just doing what other people do. And what that means is, when you come into a conflict between desire type 2, wanting status, and desire for the truth, desire 3, you'll just do what'll get you status, because that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything for the sophists, and it doesn't mean anything for Wittgenstein either. Because following the rule is just doing what people have done. And if you don't do what people have done, they get angry. And they don't pay you your salary.
Did you say Wittgenstein?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You've heard of him. He's an Austrian philosopher from 20th century.